everyone. Welcome to the Cinco de Mayo rendition of the Government Operations and Regulations Committee meeting. Today is, as I said, Cinco de Mayo. Feliz Cinco de Mayo to everyone. And we do have council members Hancock, Cash, Parker, Porterfield, Sledge, and Withers present. So we do detect a quorum. The first item on our agenda today is bills on second reading. Substitute Bill 2022-1164 by Sledge, O'Connell, Hauser, and others to amend Chapter 930 of the Metro Code pertaining to construction sites.
I'll make a motion.
Second. All right. So we do have a motion to move the bill to the floor. Councilman Sledge, would you like
What I'd like to do is make a motion on what you see indicated on the agenda as the late second substitute, so I can explain it.
Is that the one we have the text of here?
Should.
Yes, it's attached.
Yes. So I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So I'm going to go through this, and I'm also going to turn to Metro Legal and Metro Codes to verify that everything I'm saying is accurate. So we did have a discussion amongst all of us, codes, legal, industry leaders, and what we came down to was a request that, well, a few requests, and those are all indicated within here. One is to better specify what zoning codes would be affected here. So they are all spelled out, and you will note that in our discussion, DTC seemed to be a sticking point for some folks. So DTC is not included in here. My indication is that Councilmember O'Connell is working sort of separately on some sort of regulation there, but it is not included in this one. But you can see the codes that are added to what we already had in the code, which was RS, R, and RM. Those are obviously listed as well. The trade that came up again and again was concrete being poured regarding, and remember, this is no longer a noise ordinance. This is purely about outdoor construction during hours. So you'll see in the underline there that concrete pouring is excluded. So that is no longer in there. And then, in fact, actually, the other language that's added, this is not the late second substitute, I do want to mention that. The one other piece of language that is added is agreed upon industry language that clarifies that delivery and transport of materials do not fall under this as well. So you'll see that language, but the late second substitute adds that language that was agreed upon by all parties involved, and otherwise, that's the content of the substitute.
And do we have questions?
I just have a comment. I just want to thank Councilmember Sledge for all of his hard work on this. I know a lot of my constituents have been having some concerns about, some construction noise and everything. So I was actually in the process of looking at some legislation. So thank you for all of your hard work that you've put on this.
And I had a question for our staff that's here. Could you let us know how many complaints we've had since we have adjusted the hours to the currently listed hours?
So we ran the numbers for 2021 and we came up with 40. And I think, council member, that you've got that list. And I know that council member Sledge also has it as well. So it's broken down by district. Council member Sledge's district had 8. The next closest, which I think may have been Councilmember Allen's district, correct me if I'm wrong there, I think that's right.
Cash.
Councilmember Allen's is the whole 40.
I'm operating 2 years back. So that next number was 4, and then all the others had smatterings of 1s and 2s across the board. When we dug into those specific numbers and looked at them, some of those were not related to construction noise. They were, when IT did the search in Hub, it pinged the word construction and noise, but the complaint could have been, I know there was one of them where a complaint was that a person was hearing noise in their attic and it sounded like construction. So nothing, obviously unrelated, but that was data that was collected. So in any event, there you go, those are the number of complaints, 40, but I think you need to reduce that by some percentage that I can't tell you.
And I've had feedback from some construction workers in my area. They're concerned about this. One, an electrician is concerned because a lot of times he operates prior to these hours so that he doesn't have to get permits to close the roads, because if he's doing work at 5 or 6 in the morning that doesn't have noise, then it's, less paperwork, less intensive and burdensome on the small business owner to have to do that. Would this require they wait until these hours to do electricity work?
So it would depend, because this ordinance pertains to outdoor construction noise. And so it would depend on the state of the development. And, if it were a building that was completely enclosed in and they were doing interior work there, then this would not apply to that. So that could occur anytime. But if it were, a building, say just take a house that was framed up that didn't have the walls on it so that it was exposed to the air, we would consider that outdoor noise at that point in time until the building has become enclosed.
And then I also have a small business that's a sign builder, and they often set up in advance before the hours so that, again, they can get through without that. So would that also affect them?
If they were installing a sign?
Like if they were bringing the stuff to set up to install, that's still part of the construction, right?
So, but transportation of materials, generally, we do not look at as construction work. Transporting materials to a site, setting up, we view the work begins when it's, when it's in furtherance of the building itself. So
if they're putting the sign together but they haven't started using the power tools, does that count?
I would say probably not. Generally, they put the signs, most of them are generally constructed off-site at the sign company that then brought to the site. I don't know, maybe they have to do some preliminary stuff before they actually start bolting it to the building, I guess. So clearly, when they start attaching it to the building, we would view that as work. But I think the other we would just classify as the transportation of materials to the site and kind of getting ready, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that, from my perspective, if it's going to be some number less than 40 of complaints in the last year, and similarly, we had a bill regarding the small businesses where everybody was worried about the new home business law, and we had less than number of council districts, and everyone felt, well, that was kind of minimal. I feel this is kind of minimal, so I'm not going to support this particular bill. But are there any other questions? Yes, Councilman Parker.
Thank you. This question's for codes for Director Herbert. So these violations occur outside of the hours when you normally have inspectors on rotation or on staff. So I just wanted to know a little bit about, if the guy next door to me is jackhammering at 9 o'clock and I call in a codes complaint and he continues to do it night after night, who comes out there and how does that ever cross from just a complaint into a violation?
It happens daily. And so what we do is we ask that whoever is interested document it for us. Videos work fabulously, especially those that are time and date stamped. Mm-hmm. We get those and I receive those today, and then what we'll do tomorrow is we'll send the inspector to the site. What we will do is, because this ordinance has changed quite a bit over the last couple of years, we will give a warning the first time. After that, and everything is documented in our system. After that, if there's another violation that is documented, we will issue a stop work order for 3 days. So that's what, if you violate the law, it's not just a one-for-one. And I've been doing this, and Councilman Sledge knows this, that if you work on Sunday, then you choose to work one day on Sunday, I'm going to shut you down for 3 days during the week. It's going to be where you feel it. And so that's, if we give you this warning on this and then you violate again and we've got it proven, it's 3 days.
And just to follow up there, when you say video with a timestamp, so I think, most of us, our video camera of default is gonna be our smartphone these
Sure.
days. And am I correct in assuming that if I take a video with my smartphone and, don't modify the file, don't put it into another program, just copy it over and send it to y'all, is that metadata in there? Is that adequate
That's good. It's
timestamp for your
adequate
staff?
for us. It's
Okay.
adequate for
So
us.
just a smartphone video, unedited, not manipulated in any way, just sent over to y'all is adequate as far as timestamp goes. Okay, thank you.
And
And I'll just say, generally our inspectors, they know these sites, they're there routinely. They know the people that are there, and a simple video that simply shows, if it shows a truck on site or shows people, that's enough. When my inspector goes up there and shows this to the project manager, they just virtually
Got it.
never question it.
Got it.
So-
And Hub remains the best. Can we submit videos through Hub?
I think that you can, yeah.
Upload,
Yes,
yeah.
you can.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
And a follow-up question, because earlier you said there were 40, but some percentage of those were not actual noise complaints. And then when you're answering Councilman Parker, you said daily. What are
So
you
we-
getting daily?
Yeah, so we receive complaints on construction sites daily, whether it's noise, whether it's whatever it is. It's trash, it's, they're coming in through a way that they're not supposed to access the site. Yeah, there's nothing to do with what we're talking about. I'm just saying, generally speaking, and that's what we do, is we do building and construction and we receive complaints.
So the complaints you're getting daily are any time of day complaints, but you had 40 complaints in 2021, and then some percentage of those were not actually
That is
noise.
correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? So we're gonna vote on the late second substitute. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
Nay.
Well, yeah, nay. Opposed? I am opposed. But you're correct, nay. And,
It's our first nay vote, so it's understandable that you didn't.
yeah, it's
Didn't know how to
fine
do
that
it.
we're not all in consensus. It's gonna be a shock to the vice mayor. I'm gonna have to have someone go up there and hold his hand. And then now that we've substituted this, do we need to vote as substituted?
Yes.
And then all in favor of the bill as substituted?
Aye.
And opposed? Nay. There we go. Thank you very much. All right, and we get to move on to our second of three items on the agenda, BL 2022-1215 by Councilmembers Allen and Hancock to amend Title 16 of the Metro Code by adding Section 16.4.180 to amend Sections 16.12.220, 16.16.400, 16.22.50, and 16.28.110 relating to fee schedules for building permits, gas mechanical permits, plumbing permits, and electrical permits, as well as fees related to inspections, re-inspections, examinations of plans, refunds, administrative fees, and other fees charged by the Department of Codes.
So moved. Second.
Second.
All right, so it's moved and seconded. And would the staff like to discuss this a little bit? Yeah, would you like
Can
to?
I raise something real quick?
Yes, absolutely.
It's not listed on the agenda, and I'm not sure why, but there is a substitute for this bill that amends the caption and the contents where it says section 16.04.180. That is actually a section that that number that is used for something else in the code, so we need to change it to 177, and that's what the substitute does.
Super.
That's all the substitute does?
Is a clerical error.
Thank you.
So do we need to move the
Housekeeping.
substitute? Move the substitute.
Second.
All right, so does anyone have questions about the substitute? All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? And now we will address the bill as substituted. And would staff like to explain these changes?
Sure, Madam Chair, thank you. So we engaged some third-party consultants to come in and take a hard look at all of the development processes for Nashville. It's not just codes. It's fire marshal, public works, planning, et cetera. They have been on the job now for well over a year. And part of their recommendations, perhaps not surprisingly, is that generally speaking, the development side of Metro is understaffed. The codes department is understaffed, and they have recommended that we bring on 31 new positions into the department. To fund those positions, it needs to be buying through the building permit fees. They took a real hard look at the national averages, and our fees prior to this increase were less than 1/4 of the national average. Even with these increases, we are still less than 1/2 of the national average. I have met twice with the Middle Tennessee Home Builders Association and their board of directors. I have spoken with the Association of General Contractors from Middle Tennessee. Both are in support, but to say it probably more appropriately, there's no opposition. So the increase in these fees are to fund 31 new positions for the codes department.
Councilman, Councilman
Sorry.
Porterfield, yeah. Councilman Porterfield, yeah, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two quick questions. The first question is, can you give an example of an actual fee change, what it was and what it's going to?
Sure.
And then I'll save my second question until you answer that one.
So the biggest fee changes come for residential building permits. And so a home that's under our current schedule that is valued at $200,000, the current fee for the building permit will be $908. The new fee, after this is implemented, would be $1,200. So going basically from $900 to $1,200. A $300,000 home will go from $1,250 to $1,800. A $400,000 home will go from $1,600 to $2,400. And a $500,000 home will go from roughly $2,000 to $3,000.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question was there any, I guess, how did y'all get to those particular numbers, saying how we went from being less than 1/4 to still being less than 1/2? Like, was there any conversation about a bigger increase to be more in line with other cities?
So legally, the test is you have to establish fees to cover your costs. And we cannot.
Turn a profit?
Exactly.
Okay.
So the consultants literally looked at every single thing that the department does, every single function we perform, every single inspection and part of that, assigned a value to that, took it, and then derived what the fee structure should be for the individual permits, as well as for the inspections that go along with the permits.
Thank you.
Super. Any other questions, Councilman
No,
Porterfield?
for me. Thank you.
And Councilman Cash?
So I'm assuming the increase in fees will cover the 31 positions.
That is correct.
And have you determined like which each one of those 31 positions is going to be? Or-
Yes, the consultants have made recommendations as to where they should be allocated, and yes, I'm sorry I don't have those
It's
for you.
okay. I guess just as a follow up to that, like, and so you say like the biggest area is residential building permits. Do you mean that is the greatest need, that is where the positions are needed the most?
So, not necessarily.
Okay.
The consultants analyzed both the residential and then the commercial component of what we do. They analyzed it globally. They determined that our commercial fees were in line with where they should be. So there's going to be no increase in our commercial fees for building permits. It will only be for residential building permits that the fee increases. Now, we will also have fee increases for the individual trade permits and the trade inspections. All of those will be, but those increases are at 1% and 2% of where they are now. A permit now that's say $15 for a plumbing permit may go to $16 or $17.
And I'm kind of asking, I guess, the same question, or fishing for the same kind of information with this question, and that's like, I know that I'm glad this is happening because I know y'all are understaffed and working really hard, and still, you got people frustrated because you're not moving faster. And so I guess like looking at the positions, will the will there be a prioritization towards like where the lag between the application and the permit being granted, like are you, I guess is one of the goals to reduce that time of how long it takes to get a permit?
That's 100% the goal. And so the consultants have looked at different processes within the codes department, identified the places where we desperately need staff. We know that anyway, but they've documented that for us independently. And so yes, the positions are allocated very specifically to specific needs.
Great. Glad to support it.
Did you have a question? No one else?
Councilman Cash's questions covered mine. Thank you.
The one thing I'll notice for the planning department side, I've got legislation which is on our agenda tonight, but it's going to be deferred to track with the budget. And there's something about the way that that's recorded that we're able to do that one through a resolution rather than an ordinance. But for the planning piece, it will all come together with the budget.
Super. All right, so we have a motion to approve as substituted. All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? And the last item on tonight's exciting agenda is BL 2022-1217 by Allen Hancock to approve a contract between the Metro government and Oracle for hosting services of e-business suite R12 and PeopleSoft pension calculation systems.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, so whether to approve and seconded, and Ms. Darby, would you like to adjust this one?
I mean, it's a contract, give me 1 second, I've got some notes written down on another
Thank you.
item. It's a $15 million contract, it's over 10 years, it's sole source, so it's coming to council. And I've noted that there is termination with a 30 days notice termination clause in the contract.
And is this the system we're currently using?
Yes, a good portion of it is. I don't know if all of it is. I'm not sure about the PeopleSoft, but I do know that the R12 suite is something that we are currently
I
using.
can speak to that.
Dawn is here.
Dawn Clark, ITS. Yeah, we're using both of these systems. R12, of course, is the enterprise-wide system. PeopleSoft pension calculation is what our HR department uses for employees to be able to go out and do self-service and calculate their pension, and that integrates in and out of R12 as well. And just to note, we used to host a Hyperion, but we replaced that with a cloud solution. So I was able to negotiate as part of the sole source. And the last contract, which went through RFP, the last 3 went through RFP, but we never got really any decent proposals. But the last one that was through RFP, and it was a 5-year contract, was $10 million. So we moved to a 10-year contract to really go with the life of the systems as opposed to just a random five years.
I know.
And so it's. We only added $5 more million with 10, with a whole 10 years. So that's just kind of point of reference. And like I said, this has been competitively bid 3 times prior for 15 years worth. And then we had, when we initially started with them over 20 years ago, we had a emergency contract when we first implemented a system. So.
All right, any follow-up questions? All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Councilman Parker, you're dismissed. That concludes this meeting of the Government Operations Regulations Committee. Thank you, and Feliz Cinco de Mayo.